The historical Jesus, miracles, arguments, and the man who changed everything. Part 1. Why nobody can agree on this guy. Ask a Christian who Jesus was and you get a confident answer: the Son of God. God himself, wrapped in human form, sent to save humanity. Except not every Christian agrees on exactly what that means. Within Christianity alone there are tens of thousands of denominations, each with their own interpretation. So before we even invite anyone else to the conversation, the Christians are already running their own internal debate club. Now bring in the Muslims. Islam has enormous respect for Jesus. They call him Isa, and considers him one of the greatest prophets who ever walked the earth. They believe he performed genuine miracles. But the Son of God? Hard no. In Islam, God does not have children. So Jesus gets tremendous reverence in Islamic tradition. But the divine title is firmly off the table. Jewish scholars? Mainstream Judaism historically did not recognize Jesus as the promised Messiah. The criteria for what the Messiah would accomplish, reuniting the Jewish people, rebuilding the temple, ushering in an era of lasting peace, were not, from a traditional Jewish perspective, fulfilled, not even close. And then there is the secular crowd. Atheists, agnostics, historians who approach the whole thing through evidence alone. For them, the divinity question is beside the point. What matters is what the record actually shows. Here is the part that surprises most people. Despite all of this disagreement, and there is a lot of it, the overwhelming majority of professional historians, across every background and belief system, agree on one thing: Jesus of Nazareth was a real historical person. He existed. That is not up for serious debate. What is up for debate is whether he could perform miracles, or whether he was simply a remarkable human being who inspired the most successful movement in history. That question matters, because depending on how you answer it, you are essentially watching two completely different stories. So let's deal with it before we go any further. Running the numbers nobody asked for. Let me briefly do the maths that ruins everyone's day. Christians approximately 34% believe Jesus performed genuine miracles. Muslims approximately 25% believe Jesus performed real miracles granted by God. Atheists, secular approximately 16%, no miracles, Jesus was a man. Jewish communities approximately 0.2%, historically skeptical of the messianic and miraculous claims. Everyone else approximately 25%, Hindus, Buddhists, folk religions, and others. Some Buddhist thinkers look at the accounts of Jesus healing the sick or walking on water and find them entirely plausible, not because Jesus was God, but because he was an extraordinarily advanced spiritual practitioner. Certain Hindu perspectives draw explicit comparisons between Jesus and divine figures like Krishna or Rama, treating his miracles as completely consistent with how the sacred works in the world. Others in this group have simply never thought about it much. Split that final 25% down the middle and here is where we land. Roughly 71% of humanity lives within a worldview that accepts, in some form, that Jesus performed acts beyond ordinary human ability. About 29% believes he was simply a man. 3 out of 4 people on this planet believe in the miracles. Before anyone starts furiously typing, majority opinion is not how we determine historical truth. Majorities have been spectacularly wrong throughout history and will be again. The point is not that the numbers settle anything. The point is that this is not some niche theological argument. It is the central question of the most widely shared story in human history. And most of the planet has a personal stake in the answer. Why science and history keep talking past each other. Modern science is built on one core principle: repeatability. You form a hypothesis, you test it, someone else tests it, the results hold up under scrutiny. That is how we know things. Drop something heavy, it falls. Do it again tomorrow, still falls. Same laws, every time. History cannot do that, not even a little. Historical events happen once. They leave behind traces, old manuscripts, stone inscriptions, buried artifacts, and historians work backward from those traces to figure out what happened. Nobody can rerun the assassination of Julius Caesar to verify the ancient accounts. Nobody gets a second shot at the fall of Jerusalem. This gets genuinely awkward when the subject is miracles. Because miracles are by definition unrepeatable. There is no laboratory procedure for confirming whether a man walked across a lake 2,000 years ago. The fact that science cannot currently explain how that would work does not, in strict logic, mean it did not happen. It simply means it sits outside what the scientific method can currently reach. History operates by different rules. It deals in testimony, documents, and corroboration, and by those standards, the life of Jesus is among the better documented events of antiquity. Multiple independent written sources, references from non-Christian writers, including Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, and Tacitus, the Roman historian whose account of Nero's persecution of Christians specifically names Christ and his execution under Pontius Pilate. Letters from Paul written within roughly 20 years of the crucifixion, referencing people who were personally present. None of that proves the miracles happened, but it makes a clean dismissal of Jesus as legend or myth historically indefensible. Absolute truth, relative truth, and when everyone's mask slips. Every person on earth, religious or not, operates from a set of core assumptions about what is real and what matters. For a devout Muslim, the Quran is the most reliable window onto ultimate reality. For a committed empiricist, evidence that can be tested and verified is the only solid ground. For a Christian, the resurrection of Jesus is not a metaphor or a story, it is the pivot point of all history. These frameworks are not the same as opinions. They are the lenses through which everything else gets interpreted. They function, for the people who hold them, as absolute truth. Here is where it gets tricky. When these frameworks collide, and they always do, eventually, something revealing happens. People who describe themselves as fully open-minded and relativist tend to maintain that position right up until someone else's truth starts directly affecting their actual life. The person who cheerfully says, "Believe whatever you want," tends to feel rather differently when religious doctrine starts shaping the legal system they live under. The religious traditionalist who sincerely advocates tolerance tends to feel rather differently when their own institutions are publicly mocked or legally undermined. The pattern repeats in every culture, every era, without exception. What this tells us is that everyone has a truth they are not actually willing to let go of. The relativism is usually the polite public face worn over very firm private convictions. The moment those convictions come under real pressure, the live and let live attitude tends to disappear fairly quickly. So what do we actually do with this? 3 options. Option 1. Everyone agrees to stay in their lane. Your beliefs are yours. Mine are mine. Nobody imposes anything on anyone. Stops working the moment people have to share a legal system, which is almost immediately. Option 2. Science gets the final word on everything. Strip whatever cannot be empirically verified out of public life. Clean in theory, historically generates enormous resistance from the vast majority of humanity. Option 3. Accept that absolute truth probably exists and matters deeply, while also accepting that no single person or institution currently holds the complete picture. Build systems where people can hold their deepest convictions without treating everyone else's as threats to be eliminated. Requires genuine humility, and the honest reading of human history is that we are not naturally gifted at it. And yet option 3 remains the only approach that has ever produced anything resembling real peace between people who fundamentally disagree. Anyway, Jesus, let's actually go. Part 2. The life of Jesus. The world he was born into. First-century Roman-occupied Judea was not a comfortable place to live unless you happened to be Roman and wealthy, which the vast majority of people were not. Rome ran Judea through a combination of military occupation, punishing taxation, and local client rulers who answered to the empire. The sitting king, Herod the Great, was politically skilled, obsessively ambitious in his building projects, and genuinely dangerous to anyone he perceived as a rival. Crucifixion was not a rare, extreme punishment, it was a standard instrument of Roman public order, used routinely to discourage rebellion. Into this world, in approximately 4 BCE, in the small town of Bethlehem, a child was born to a young woman named Mary and her betrothed husband, Joseph, a carpenter. The Gospel accounts record that Mary had received a divine announcement. The child she would carry was to be the Son of God, conceived not through ordinary means but through the action of the Holy Spirit. That is the claim at the center of everything that follows. Visitors arrived to mark the birth, shepherds from the nearby fields, and scholars from distant eastern lands who had tracked an unusual celestial event to its source. Herod, informed that a child had been born who was prophesied to become king of the Jews, ordered the killing of every male child under 2 years old in the Bethlehem region. Joseph, warned in a dream, took his family and fled to Egypt. They stayed until Herod died, which happened not long after, then returned and settled in Nazareth, a small town in the region of Galilee. 30 years, one story. The historical record then goes almost completely silent for 3 decades. There is exactly one surviving account from Jesus' childhood. At 12, he traveled with his family to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. On the journey home, his parents discovered he was not with the group. After 3 days of searching, which, it is fair to say, must have been extremely stressful, they found him in the temple, sitting with the religious scholars, asking questions and giving answers that astonished everyone present. When his mother expressed what was probably a fairly intense mix of relief and frustration, Jesus seemed genuinely confused about why they had been searching at all. Had they not known where he would be? After that, the record goes quiet again. He grew up in Nazareth. He worked as a carpenter. He had brothers and sisters. For roughly 18 years after that temple incident, nothing. John, a river, and a desert. When Jesus steps back into the historical record, it is alongside a striking figure who had already attracted considerable attention on his own, his cousin John. John had set himself up in the wilderness near the Jordan River, preaching repentance and warning that a decisive moment in history was approaching. He wore rough clothing, ate whatever the desert provided, and drew large crowds from the cities and towns of Judea. His signature practice was baptism, ritual immersion in the river as an act of cleansing and commitment. Jesus came to John and asked to be baptized. John resisted, if the relationship was what John believed it to be. The arrangement should surely be the other way around. Jesus insisted. The baptism happened. All 4 gospel accounts record the moment that followed, as Jesus came up from the water. The sky opened, the Spirit of God descended visibly like a dove, and a voice from heaven declared him to be God's beloved Son. Whatever one makes of that theological, the public ministry of Jesus had begun. Immediately after, Jesus went alone into the desert for 40 days of fasting and prayer. At the end of those 40 days, hungry, isolated, physically at his lowest, he was confronted by the devil with 3 direct temptations. Use your power to feed yourself. Prove your identity through a public spectacle. Accept dominion over all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for your allegiance. He refused every one. The character of the ministry that followed, defined by service rather than power, by depth rather than display, was established here. 12 men and a growing crowd. Jesus gathered 12 followers, selecting them as he found them at their ordinary work. Fishermen pulling in nets on the Sea of Galilee. A tax collector at his collection booth. Simon Peter and his brother Andrew. James and John. Philip, Matthew, Thomas, and Judas Iscariot. That last name will matter. Over the next 3 years, Jesus became widely known across Galilee and Judea. He healed people suffering from serious illness. He restored sight to the blind. He fed a crowd of 5,000 from 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish, with 12 baskets of leftovers. He walked across the surface of the Sea of Galilee during a storm and then stopped the storm with a word. He raised a man named Lazarus from the dead after 4 days in a sealed tomb. His teaching drew equally large crowds. The Sermon on the Mount remains one of the most cited pieces of ethical teaching in human history. Blessings on the poor, the grieving, the merciful, the peacemakers, the call to love your enemies, the instruction to treat others as you would want to be treated yourself. He did not teach by quoting authorities. He spoke on his own. You have heard it said, but I say to you. The people who decided he had to go. The Pharisees were a well-organized religious movement dedicated to strict observance of Jewish law and its many elaborations. For them, this observance was both personally meaningful and a form of cultural resistance to Roman influence, a way of keeping Jewish identity intact under occupation. Jesus and the Pharisees collided, repeatedly and publicly. He shared meals with people society considered disreputable, tax collectors, known sinners, those who sat outside the boundaries of respectable religious life. He healed people on the Sabbath, arguing that human need in front of him took precedence over ceremonial rules. He made pointed, public remarks about religious leaders who performed their observances with great visibility while neglecting the justice and compassion those observances were meant to produce. None of this was managed diplomatically. By the time he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, welcomed by crowds waving palm branches and shouting that he was the long-awaited King of Israel, the religious leadership had moved well past disapproval. They were actively planning how to remove him. The Last Supper and the kiss that ended everything. The night before his death, Jesus gathered with his 12 disciples for a final meal. He took bread, broke it, passed it around, and said it was his body, given for them. He took wine, poured it, and said it was his blood, poured out for many. He told them to continue doing this in his memory. That meal, the Last Supper, is the origin of a ritual that 2 billion people still observe today. He also told his disciples that one of them would betray him. The table went quiet. Judas Iscariot had already made his deal. 30 silver coins, a modest sum by any measure, in exchange for pointing out Jesus to the authorities in a way that would allow an arrest without triggering a public disturbance. After the meal, in a garden called Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives, Judas arrived with armed guards. He identified Jesus with a greeting kiss, an ordinary gesture between a teacher and a student. Used here as a signal, Jesus was taken. Death and what came after. The proceedings were legally irregular. Jesus was brought before the Jewish High Council on charges of blasphemy. Then transferred to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Pilate found no basis for the death penalty under Roman law. He said so. Then he ordered the execution anyway, yielding to the demands of the crowd and the religious leadership. Jesus was beaten, mocked, given a crown of thorns, and forced to carry the heavy wooden crossbeam of his cross through the streets of Jerusalem. He was crucified on a hill outside the city between 2 convicted criminals. Crucifixion was designed to be slow, agonizing, and maximally public, Rome's clearest statement about what happened to those who challenged its authority. He hung on the cross for 6 hours. His recorded words included a request that God forgive those responsible for his death. His final words, according to John, were 3, "It is finished." He was taken down and sealed in a tomb. 3 days later, the tomb was empty. The accounts of what followed are the most contested and the most consequential in all of human history. Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene in the garden outside the tomb. He appeared to his disciples in a locked room. He walked and talked with 2 followers on a road without them recognizing him, until he broke bread with them at dinner. Paul, writing roughly 20 years after these events, records that the risen Jesus was seen by more than 500 people at once, and pointedly notes that most of them are still alive. 40 days after the resurrection, Jesus ascended into the sky, with a promise to return. His followers, a small, frightened group who had been in hiding, were transformed by these events into something else entirely. Within a single generation, communities of believers existed across the Roman world. Within 3 centuries, Christianity was the official religion of the empire. Today it is the largest religion on earth. One last thing. Whether Jesus performed miracles or not, whether he was divine, or human, or a great prophet, or something no existing category quite covers, there is one point that is simply not in dispute. No person in recorded history has left a deeper mark on the world. The legal traditions of entire civilizations, the founding charters of universities and hospitals, the concept that every human being carries inherent dignity regardless of status or origin, the calendar on your phone, all of it shaped, directly or indirectly, by the life of a carpenter from a small town in occupied Judea who was publicly executed as a criminal before he turned 40. Kingdoms were built in his name. Kingdoms were burned down in his name. The greatest art, music, and literature humanity has produced keep circling back to the same story. Did he live? Yes. Did he die on a cross under Pontius Pilate? Yes. The historical record on those 2 points is solid. Was he who his followers believed him to be? That one is still on you.